Hey, good afternoon. We're here with Kerry Ann from CB Solutions. How you doing, Kerry?
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
Good stuff. If you'd just like to, kick us off with giving us a bit of an introduction as to who you are, what you do, how long you've been doing it for, and a little bit about the company, please.
Okay, so I'm Kerry Taylor. I'm the Managing Director of a manufacturing business based out in Lisset in East Yorkshire. And we're a commercial manufacturing business, so we make UPVC windows, doors, aluminium windows, doors, curtain walling, and internal timber fire door sets and screens. Mainly for the modular builders. About 80% of our business is modular builders, but we have diversified into new markets as well of late following COVID. The business is owned by my father. It was set up by him 23 years ago. And I joined 7 years ago now, and following being made redundant after being in education for 11 years. And it was not by default that I actually went into this role. I always have to add that. But I was made redundant at quite a tricky time, really. Having never had a day off sick, I was due to have a period of about 2 or 3 weeks off work because I was going in for a knee operation. So I'd shattered my ACL, my MCL, my meniscus, playing netball. So I was made redundant literally a fortnight before that operation. So rather than kind of start looking for jobs and hobbling to an interview and then saying, oh, I need a day off a week for physio, me going into CB Solution worked for me and for my dad at the time. He had a really wonderful consultant in the business at the time, which was planning his exit. Well, not an exit, but allowing him to become more away from the business and not too involved in the day-to-day operations. So I went in to help sort of like look at the pipeline of work and the business development, the security of the work, to give him the comfort that he could move away with a senior management team in place. So that was 7 years ago. And after about 12 months, so I went in, the plan was only probably to be there for a few weeks whilst I got sorted with my knee again. But I went in after a fortnight and rest history, fell in love with the place, the establishment, everything it stands for. The minute I walked through the door, it was just so far removed from what I'd known in 11 years in education and Ofsted and things like that. The culture, everything was different. And then after about 6 months, the consultant and the senior management team, they approached me asking if I would be interested in joining the senior management team as the managing director to support my dad distancing himself. I said no at first. I felt it was too much too soon in a new industry. But they helped prepare me of what was to come by appointing me as the general manager. So I got an overall view of the business, and during that sort of like general management position, I went on some courses like finance for non-directors, and looked more into production and things like that. And then 6 months after that, so a year after I joined the business, I then became MD, and that's how I've got into it. And we've been established 23 years now, going strong.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. So obviously 23 years, and the last 2 or 3 years, you mentioned diversification slightly because of COVID. What was the biggest impact of COVID for you guys?
It's tricky for everybody. I mean, we were fortunate that in our business, we could keep going. Obviously, some businesses fully did close and shut shop, didn't they? But we supplied to modular builders, and obviously in the commercial sector, there was a massive need for A&E units, testing stations, lots of temporary accommodation, things like that. So we was quite busy. Yes, we felt the pinch of that because there was so many guidelines to follow. So whereas we would normally have fitters sharing a van, traveling down to London, staying in a hotel, staying there all week, because of the 2-meter rule and hotels closed. Yes, we were still operating and we still had business, but it came at extra costs in that 2 guys had to go in separate vans to the 2-meter rule. There weren't as many hotels open, so they were back and forth. The leadership team, I would say, during COVID was because it was quite a newly established team then. It was our first big test coming together. How do we navigate through this, as it was for many? I think we did remarkably well, learning, who to furlough, the legislation, everything like that. So we did furlough some staff. We brought a core team together. to keep the business going and meeting the needs of, you know, the country really, with the fast response to A&E units, and quite sadly mortuaries and things was involved in those. So yeah, we were fortunate to keep going, but yes, margins were heavily affected, but we was in a better place than some people, and we learned a lot from that. We really did learn a lot, but we got on the back of that a little bit as well, in terms of what we saw come out of COVID in our industry was a massive increase in staycation. So a lot of the log cabin manufacturers really saw big increases in the demand for, you know, specialist bespoke log cabins, because obviously the restrictions on traveling abroad at that time, and the testing and things like that. So because we're used to serving the modular builders, we kind of use that skill set, and now how good we are at responding quite quick and making our windows. And we targeted some of them, and we secured some really big contracts, some quite long contracts as well within that industry. So a little bit of a positive, you know, did come out of it for us as well, and we're quite successful in that sector now as well.
Sure thing. Thank you for that. So in terms of, I suppose, changes within the business that you had to make, were there one or two that stuck in terms of perhaps internal workings and things like that? You mentioned benefits and thought, well, actually that's better than what we were doing before.
Yeah, well-being definitely came out of COVID. I mean, mental health is a big sort of like discussion point at the moment. But coming out of COVID and seeing how some of our staff that were furloughed, how it impacted on them being at home all the time, we had to make some real big changes on helping transition them back into working life. And the things that we've done, I think, are very important for what we're experiencing now with the energy crisis and things as well. So we've got a social club here, so we put on like team activities and things just to get people out and about, outside the workplace bonding. We've actually set up an employee voice committee as well that meet quarterly. We sent quite a few staff on mental health first aid courses, but then we also sent all our production managers on as well. So they're not a first aider, but they can recognise and signpost their staff that they're working with every day to our mental health first aiders. We set up Employee of the Month to keep, you know, morale high, get people hearing the positive things others are saying about them. And we invested hugely, about 160,000 on a welfare centre for the staff. They've got like a 50-inch Sky Sports TV, dartboard, pool table, things like that, shower, just little things like that, you know, just to help them a little bit. So yeah, we tried to do quite a lot of things, suggestion box, making sure they've got a channel and a forum where they can make suggestions, and we will listen to them and we'll feed back on those as well. So I mean, that's been one of the big changes. But then obviously margins from sort of like more of a business point of view as well. Margins, we've made sure we've employed a buyer now into business, crucial at the time, because not only did we see costs going up as suppliers couldn't get hold of materials, but also a lot of our supply chain, unfortunately, we were saying goodbye to that didn't make it through. So for our survival, it was important that we invested in the buyer's role and appointed somebody, and we've spread our risk by bringing on more suppliers, making sure we audited them as well as not just the quality, but their sort of like financial security as well, and just trying to squeeze margins, because ultimately if we keep putting up costs, we lose our customer. So yeah, that was one change that came out of COVID as well.
Cool, thank you. It's a good share. Nice to hear that you know, you've done a lot for the staff there, which I'm sure is appreciated. So that's a good outcome from that. So moving on to the future then, in terms of, I suppose, where you are now and how you see things going ahead. What does that look like, and what do you see as the main challenges are for you?
Currently the energy, as I'm sure everyone's discussing.
There's a lot of challenges that are very similar to most businesses.
Yeah, it's quite scary, but again, how that impacts our staff. So where wellbeing is going to be really essential at the moment, to support them as well. I think obviously the easy approach was let's just put wages up, but actually when our costs are going up as well, it's, you know, we've got to manage a business as well. So For us, we've just gone into our year ends, finishes 30th of June. So we've just gone into our new financial year. And we've written a 5-year plan. So we're in year 1 of the next 5-year plan. And that plan is to grow the business further 10% year on year till we get to about 16 million turnover, is what we're predicting by the end of the 5 years. And from about year 3, we believe the site will be just approaching its sort of like maximum production capacity. We have 3 factories here. We've got 2 of the business streams, the UPVC and the aluminium. They're on night shifts now, so we're operating almost 24 hours. And we've got one other department within the 5 years to put onto a night shift, and then go from, we have 2 shifts, but go to a full 24-hour running plan. So year 3 will probably see us look at whether we expand into another premises.
What's going on? It sounds like a good, solid 5-year plan. So moving on then to yourself and being MD for, is it 7 years, did you say, or maybe 6?
6 years. I've been here 7 years and I've been MD for 6.
So what would you say is your biggest learning since you've been there as MD?
Oh gosh, many.
You can pick one or 2. I know it's a difficult question.
Lots. To be secretly nosy, so I think you would determine that you describe that as being curious. You've got to be curious all the time. But I say secretly nosy because sometimes I think you have to do that with discretion. Being curious all the time has been one of my biggest learning. Don't put too much trust in people, whether it be an employee, customer, supplier, anything. Don't put too much trust in people. I think that's one of my biggest learnings. But the business is the priority, absolutely. And sometimes when you've worked with children in education, you're very empathetic. You hear quite a lot of different stories. And I've had to learn very much to put that a little bit aside, where, we want to be empathetic to the supplier that unfortunately can't pay the bill this week, or the employee that's having a really difficult circumstance. I've got to always focus on the bigger picture of that and the impact and the detriment to the business. The supplier doesn't pay us. Yes, we can help you for as long as we can, but ultimately, how's that going to impact us? What does that say to the other suppliers that we're making pay bang on time? The same with the employee. The employee is having a terrible time and they need the time off, but what does that say to the other employees that you don't? Do you know what I mean? Or the employee that isn't coming forward. So empathy is one you need, but it's to control that to the benefit of the business at all times.
Good share. And then if we were to perhaps go back in time and say meet yourself at 18, or perhaps look at someone who's starting out in business today, a younger person perhaps starting their journey, what's the best piece of advice you could give to that early stage person in business?
You've got to be a proper listener, I say, which is quite interesting because actually when I was younger, I was diagnosed with ADD, which is an attention deficit disorder. So I never had the hyperactivity, but apparently I struggled to concentrate. And in this role, an active listener is obviously the correct term, but I'm from Yorkshire, so I say proper listener. So back when I was 18, I would say, listen more, learn to listen properly from a younger age, because I would say that is only a skill I've learned in probably the last 10 years, because I've been quite an ambitious, forthright person, wanting to carve my own step. When you're in the position that I'm in now, you have to listen to everybody and you have to listen properly. And when I mean by properly, it's about giving that feedback, whether it's constructive, it's negative, it's positive. So listen to what everybody's saying, the employee, the customer, the supplier, and give feedback on that. And I wish I'd learned that skill a little bit sooner than the past 10 years.
It's a good share. Thank you for that. Good advice. So what inspires you to do what you do? Or what inspires you currently? Might be books or podcasts, could be obviously the team, the people that you work with, friends, family, anything inspirational that you'd like to share that's relevant to you at the moment.
Well, number one there is my dad. 100% is my dad. I mean, it's his business. He's built such a wonderful platform for us to myself and my colleague John, who's also a friend, the other director, to build on. He really has. I mean, he's invested so much, he's put faith in us, he still guides us. Yeah, so ultimately he inspires me. I had a really good upbringing. I actually lived with my dad, and my dad are separated, but you know, I have a very good relationship with her. And for me, coming into his business and being trusted enough with his business, it's about paying back to him what the childhood he gave me. So yeah, he really inspires me. But as well as my dad, it's the people here. I get so much satisfaction out of hearing what the staff's goals are, what their successes are, whether it be one of the guys on the shop floor saying, yeah, I made that window all by myself from start to finish today, following that fabrication ticket. That's his success. I love that. But then, you know, other staff that have progressed within the company, I've come from the shop floor into the office, into senior roles, people that have done qualifications. I have a young girl that I share an office with, and she joined us as a receptionist, and she's just done a level 5 CIPD in HR and created a full new role here as we've developed from scratch. And she totally earns that role. You know, she's 22 and she's doing amazing. So yeah, so the people here and seeing their success stories, knowing I've helped them achieve that success, the same as I trust them and I've helped develop them, the same as my dad's done that with us. I've learned that from him, and that's what inspires me, definitely.
Brilliant, thank you, good share. And then lastly, is there any latest news around your business that you'd like to share in terms of perhaps directing people? It may even just be their website or anything like that.
No, on a big recruitment drive. If there's anybody in this, we've secured some really good big contracts that we'll be sharing sort of like the next few weeks. And so there'll be a lot more recruitment opportunities here. So I think that's the main news. And then, yeah, just if you want to follow us on LinkedIn, you'll see the announcement of a couple of prestigious projects we've just heard.
Sick. Thank you very much, Kerry. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And thank you for your shares and feedback, and all the best with it.